Hi, Anthony. This is Ira. I'm recording here some feedback on your statement of belief, which I hope will be helpful as you're doing your final revisions on the major essay for the course, the Defining Good Argument in Digital Context essay. My aim here is to share some thoughts, comments, questions on this statement of belief, not to evaluate the statement of belief, which was good, but rather to suggest some ways in which your thinking and writing in this final assignment, or this major essay should be systematic, and to help you think about what exactly that looks like in this context. So basically what I'm going to be doing is reading back through your statement of belief, highlighting some core moments, and noting some things that I think you're saying that are compelling or well put, and also noting some places where I want to push you a little further or ask you to think more systematically. So, one of the things that you highlight here in this first paragraph that I think is really important, and it's, on the one hand, it might seem obvious to you, but it's also something a lot of people actually overlook, and that I think is really crucial, is argument starts from a space of not agreeing. Two or more people are in some way or another not in agreement, and not in agreement for reasons. So I think that starting point is really helpful. When we argue, what's at stake is disagreement for reasons. I think that really matters, and that's a valuable place to start. And as you know, what we think are good reasons varies quite a bit among us. So, and I think this question of how do you know if you're being persuaded toward a good argument or a bad one is a great motivating question for thinking this through. So, when you start to think this through, talk about what is a good argument. You talk about what a good argument is and how an argument can be considered a strong argument. And I'm curious if you see those as two different ways of saying the same thing. So a good argument is a strong argument. Or do you see those as two different things? So a good argument's one kind of thing and a strong argument's another kind of thing. If you see those as being basically the same, I'd like to hear more. I'd be interested to hear more about how they're the same as you see them. And if you see them as being different, I'd be interested in hearing more about what their differences are as you see it. You describe a strong argument as one that can play to both sides of the argument itself, bringing both opinions into consideration. And I want to caution you here a little bit away from too much reliance on sort of the both sides narrative. Often when we argue, especially in digital contexts, it's much more multilateral. There's lots of sides, not just two. When we disagree, we might disagree for a bunch of different reasons, not just two reasons. So I just want to encourage you to kind of keep in mind that both sides might be a little too constraining. But taking that into mind, what I hear you saying here is that a strong argument brings multiple opinions into consideration, and does so by having a factual and a strong case as to why one of these views is correct. And so one of the things I want to kind of ask you about is, what do you count as factual? Where do you draw the line? And how and why? And why does it matter? Who cares? If you can persuade people by lying or by saying things that you believe to be true but that are actually totally false, they're not factual, why does that matter? Certainly it can be very effective. So I want to kind of, I'm curious if it does matter, if it matters that we don't ignore the other side or that we're factual, why? Why is that important? And to be clear, I'm not asking you to tell me what you think I think. I'm asking you, why do you value those things? Why is that important to you? What's at stake here? How's this, and this is the systematic question, how's this related to what you think argument is for? So you describe argument up front as something that happens in a space of disagreement where people have reasons. So what is argument for as a way of responding to disagreement with reasons? What's the goal of argument? And I think like asking and answering that question should be helpful in articulating why you value these things, having facts on your side, having a strong case, and you might want to explain a little more what that means, not ignoring contrary views, not trying to force people, so on and so forth. So how are those related to the thing that you see as particularly the purpose or value of argument? And I think as you go through that question, you can look back over the different things that you value and you ask, how are these things related to my definition of good argument? Part of what you're doing there is building a systematic theory where all the pieces are related to the organizing definition. I'm curious if you think that it's always bad to put up a wall to cut off one side of the argument. And here, one of the things I'm kind of thinking about is, what about cases where people are arguing online, but they're not really arguing with each other. They're more arguing they are arguing with each other, but they're not arguing with the idea that they'll legitimately be open to each other. They're arguing for some other audience, for 2 people, 5 people arguing on Facebook, and they're all only sort of arguing with one another. They're arguing more for the sake of the other 100 people who will see the argument. And some of those people might become persuaded. Some of those people might have open minds, even though the 5 people talking don't. And so my question is, can that be good argument or must that be bad? Because that's a case where the people in that example I'm giving would be putting up walls, they're cutting off the other side, so on and so forth, but they're doing so, they're performing something, they're performing disagreement with the idea of persuading some other audiences who will kind of happen along and see this argument unfolding. Can that be good? And if so, how does that impact your definition? And if not, why not? Here you talk about forcing your opinion on someone and trying to persuade someone toward your argument. And I'm curious, do you see those as the same, or do you think that there's ways of trying to persuade each other that are not so forceful? If you think they're the same, how does that relate to some of the things you said earlier about strong argument, which seemed to me, at least as I was reading it, to be about persuasion? And if you think they're different, you might want to move away from using persuasion in this sheerly negative way here. And then as you go along, one of the things you start to focus on is how you give respect as an individual person that may or may not have different opinions than you. So I want to kind of, I'd like to hear more about, what does it mean to give respect? Why does it matter? What's the value of it? What's the point of it for your definition of good argument? Why do we care? I mean, obviously, you know that I'm sympathetic to that, but the point isn't, again, really what I think. The point is, like, why does this matter for your definition of good argument? Giving respect. What's at stake here? And what does it look like? What does that look like in digital contexts? So when you're talking about becoming persuaded, you're mostly talking about that interpersonally, talking with another person one-on-one. What does that look like in digital spaces? Is it the same? Is it different? Why? Either way. And sort of taking all that in line, as you know, there are just as many ways to approach an argument, both those that you consider good and those that you can consider bad. But then you say, not all are the correct or appropriate way to do so. And so what is correct or appropriate? You say, as long as you can be considerate to both, and I'm going to say multiple, sides of an argument and understand where they come from, even if you cannot persuade the other party in the argument to see your side, then overall the argument is solid. Depending on what side of an argument you side on, there should always be a sign of respect. So here as a reader, one of the things that's happening is it feels like you're really starting to nail down that definition. And one of the things I'm looking for and hoping to see is a very clear statement of how you're defining good argument, and then also why. How do these things fit together? Why do they matter? Why should other people value them? What would happen if other people took on your view? And how does that all cash out in digital contexts? How is that different from just the interpersonal? I appreciated reading this statement of belief. I think you did a good job on it. And I'm looking forward to reading your major essay, the Defining Good Argument in Digital Context essay. I hope these comments that I've been offering are useful as you're doing your final revisions on that essay. And I look forward to reading you soon. Thanks.